Good evening, everybody. We're still, after almost a year, still sort of learning Zoom, but welcome. It's incredibly exciting to be offering this coalition effort at Running for School Board 101. This is very much like how do we present this opportunity in more of a very clear and transparent coalition sort of minded way for running. Some of you may be really interested in running now, some might be interested in running in the future, and some might not be interested in running at all, but just really curious. But this is just not exhaustive, but it's a sort of a first look at the basics for how to run. And so I'm going to hand it over to Yvonne at Delaware PTA.
I'm Yvonne Johnson. Many of you might know me from Delaware PTA. I'm just going to go. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. We are super excited about sharing this presentation with you. Like Larissa said, it's just really how to run for school board 101. So just a few housekeeping rules. Everybody's muted. If you have questions or any kind of remarks, you can put them in the chat. If we do not get to your questions, which we hope to get to everyone's questions, we're going to save the chat and we will get back to you with responses. After this, we are recording. Lori, did you hit record? I just want to make sure we're recording. We're going to send out the recording to everybody that's registered and an FAQ. So don't worry about taking notes because we're going to be putting together an FAQ from the slide deck to make it easier to sort of go over what we're presenting tonight. So just as an overview of what we're going to talk about tonight, first we're going to discuss what the role of a school board member is, how to file to run for school board, what it takes to be a candidate. It's hard work, and we want to sort of go over what it is to actually be a candidate and what that entails. And then we're going to hear from two current board members, Shanika Perry from Brandywine School District and Dr. Adriana Bohm from Red Clay School Board. And then at the end, we will take questions and any closing remarks. Okay, I already went over this. And Larissa, you're up.
Okay, great. By the way, I just realized I didn't say my name, Larissa Schutt from First State Educate, and I'm just so grateful that everybody's here tonight. So we're not going to read the slides, but what are school board members responsible for? I remember a few years ago, I was sitting in a Leadership Delaware seminar and Superintendent Greg from Christina was speaking and he was presenting. And then at the end of it, one of the questions was, well, who actually manages your budget in the district? And he said, well, it's actually our school board members. They have the last say for the budget and how the money is actually spent and activated for kids and for teachers. And he said, it's about, well, somebody said, well, how much money is that? And he said, well, it's about $330 million. And I'll tell you, everybody in the room just was completely floored to think that there are 7 board members who are elected by the people in the district to manage and make decisions on that much money. So it struck us all at that point that serving on a school board, an elected school board in the state, is really one of the most important positions in education one can hold. And there are really 3 main responsibilities. One is, what do you do with that money and how do you activate those funds for the programs and services, comprehensive services and teaching and learning, and the quality and the conditions for the teachers in your district. 2, hiring the superintendent. There's no more important person in the district to make those decisions for outcomes for kids. Hiring your superintendent and holding that superintendent accountable to whatever outcomes you decide is most important in your district and whatever vision school board members are holding as a response to the community and families in their district. And 3rd, what is the strategic plan for the district and who is paying attention to what metrics along the way matter? So what is the vision for the district? Who are you hiring in the district? And how do you spend that money?
Thanks, Larissa. So I'm going to talk about what the qualities of an effective school board member is. So first and foremost, you have to be committed. It's a lot of work and you don't get paid. So you really have to be passionate about education and the things that are going on in your school district. We need people that are going to show up, be responsive to their constituents, and work hard for students. You should also be a strategic and innovative thinker. You need to think outside the box just because. So think about it. A year ago, would we have ever done something like this on a virtual platform? We would have all said, no way, where everything's in person. But we have learned we had to do the next best thing. And so we've had to sort of pivot to what's going on with the pandemic. And it's been great because more people are engaged and are paying attention to what's going on. So thinking outside the box and being a really a strategic thinker is a really important quality of being an effective school board member. You have to be able to also collaborate and know when to compromise. Collaboration, when you, so a school board meeting takes place in public, right? It's not an interaction of the public with the school board. That comes, through email or calling a school board member or having a conversation with them. But when you're in public, you need to show the community that you can collaborate and you know when to compromise. It's really unhealthy for the community to see any kind of things going on between each other. You have to come together, and not everybody's going to agree on every decision, but if you vote on something, right, and it's, let's say, a 5-2 vote and there are 2 people who voted against it, you really have to go with the will of the board. That's your fiduciary responsibility. You need to be really intentional with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I mean really intentional. So with your thought processes and the things that you do, because you will approve decisions for hiring administration in the district. So the superintendent makes the decisions. Your one employee is the superintendent, but they hire all, they make the decisions on hiring all the administration, but you have the final say. You have to approve those administrative contracts. And so it's really important that you look intentionally. Are we being diverse, equitable, and including everyone? And you really need to be focused on student outcomes. I mean, that's what an effective school board does. They want to know what literacy rates are. They want to know what numeracy rates are. Are our children are we at a high graduation rate? How are our children doing in middle school? All the things that have to do with student outcomes, it's the responsibility of the school board. And you must be an effective communicator. You have to be able to talk to people and be responsive. So typically, a school board member gets a lot of emails. That's what people do, or they call you. Even they might text you, right? And it's really important that if you're going to be serving as a school board member, that you are responsive to the community, because that's their only way to communicate with you and let you know what their views are. Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah Buchich from Delaware PTA. In order to run, you do have to be an adult. So it's a requirement. You have to be 18 years old. You have to also be a citizen of the United States and a Delaware resident. And it's important that you are in the school district and that you live and reside in the school district that you're running for, and also that that you're a resident of the nominating district. If you take a look at the map of your school district, it's broken up into separate districts, nominating districts, and they're not all up for election at the same time. So you want to be sure that the seat you're running for is the nominating district you live in. You also can't be a paid employee of the district. And because you are going to be handling a lot of money, like Larissa said, you have to have never had a conviction of embezzlement. Super important. So in order to file, you do have to pick up a school board member filing packet. And I am going to put the link to that in the chat box. The packet includes a candidate filing form, and this packet is everything you're going to need. It has all these forms we're talking about now. It also has a certification of intent, meaning that you are submitting your name in order to run. And it also has a withdrawal form in there, and it has to be notarized. So once you file, that's really when you need to start doing the hard work. And like Yvonne said, you have to do whatever it takes to research the topics and to get to the voters. If you go to school board meetings a lot, people will be familiar with your name already, and you'll probably be familiar with a lot of the issues. If you're not, then it's a great time to dive right in and get started. You're also going to have to look at raising money. And obviously, you turn to your immediate environment and start asking your family, friends, and people for support. You do have to keep track of those numbers because you're going to be required to submit it to the state. In the packet, that I'll put the link in the chat box. There is a form for campaign finance should it go over a certain amount of money. So you just want to keep track of your expenses. And then you definitely want to understand the makeup of your district. You want to understand the demographics of the area that you're running in, and what kinds of things they're looking for in a candidate. If you're not already going to school board meetings, you're definitely going to want to start going. People are familiar with people that they see a lot and hear a lot, and it's really good to get in, especially to get familiar with the issues. And one of the really important things is you want to know what you need to win. You want to know what your win number is and where your voters live and what they're looking for. So those are all important things to research. And then also, it's really hard to do this alone. So you really want to look around you and build a coalition of people who can help you win.
Thanks, Sarah. So this is our February checklist. So this is just the things, if you decide to run, that in February you should be checking off the boxes. Obviously, file. The filing deadline is March 5th of 2021, Friday at 4:30 p.m. Literally, if you walk in there at 4:34, they won't take your paperwork. So you have to pay attention to that. Many people, like Sarah mentioned, they download the packet and then they go in person and they file because you have to prove your residency. Make sure that when you go that you take a picture of you filing. Like that's going to be something where I'm excited, I'm running for school board, and you take a picture of you filing, whether you're filling out the papers or you're standing in front of the door, whatever it is, but make it a fun thing because you're going to want to use it in your campaign and on your social media outreach. Really important when you go to file is to get a copy of the voter file from the Department of Elections. It does not cost any money. They have to give it to you if you ask them for it. And what that will do is that's going to tell you everyone that that has voted in the school board elections. I would recommend getting the last 3 years. Let me just elaborate a little bit on this and how important it is. Firstly, school board elections are in May. Now, I know last year it was in July, but that was because of the pandemic. But they're typically the second Tuesday of May every single year. It is not with the general election. So people don't even know there is an election. Not every school is a polling place. It's important to know what the polling places are. So typically turnout is abysmal, which we would love to see change because we want more people involved in school board elections and voting. So it's really important that you know who voted because these are the people that you would want to outreach to make sure you're getting their support if you intend to run. So that's why it's really important for you to figure out, who's voting in these elections and then add on more people. So let's say your win number is 1,000, okay, and 300 people. And I'm not joking you. There are people who have been elected to school boards with 300 votes. So if you got 1,000 votes, you're going to win the school board election, right? And you really need to know where these votes are coming from. Typically, people who go to the polls to vote on school board election day, they know who they're voting for before they get there. It's not like a regular election because they're going there. It's not like they're going in to vote for president and they're just going to vote for school board. They're only going there to vote for school board. So that's a really important thing to remember. To focus on that win number, you really have to analyze the data, say, okay, the last 3 years, this many people voted in the school board election, and I need this amount of numbers, of votes to win the election. You should start mobilizing your supporters and volunteers, like Sarah mentioned. February is the time to do it because it takes time. People are busy. You want to get your supporters. I would even recommend finding somebody, like obtaining a treasurer and setting up your financial committee. Because if you raise more than $2,000, it's more complicated. And that's fine if you have raised more money. So you could have different things. And I know we're in the middle of a pandemic and hopefully we're coming out of that. But typically I have seen different people do different things. They might have a restaurant party and charge, $50 a person and then use that as a fundraiser for their school board election. I've seen or they might just have something and ask for donations. There's different ways you can do it, but because we're virtual, it's going to be different. So you have to think outside the box. How can you raise money in that same way and still reach the people that you want to support them? And you need to have a vision and a mission for your campaign. Why are you running? What is making you want to run? And what are you going to do? That's what people want to know because we're all facing the same things. 2 big issues, the reopening of schools K through 12 and social justice. These are the two issues right now facing our schools. And so these are the things that people are going to want to hear. What are you going to do about that? Like, how are you going to, what do you think of these things? So you really have to educate yourself on the issues. And if I'm talking too fast, I apologize. I talk fast. You need in March exposure, especially like Sarah mentioned. If you've been attending school board meetings regularly, then people probably know your name. At least you have name recognition. If you've been involved in your school district somehow, if you worked on a referendum, or you're an active PTA member, or you're, serving on a district committee, these are all great things. And it also gives you name recognition. But if you haven't done those things, you still can run for school board, but you need to start attending these things in order to get your name out there, because that's a big deal. Exposure is a big deal. So the first thing you should do in March is at the March school board meeting, whenever that might be, you need to sign up for public comment. Most likely there's going to be a Zoom option. I mean, I don't know how school boards are going to be moving forward, but if PTA has anything to say about it, we absolutely want to keep the Zoom option, because we have never seen so many people, parents and families engaged in their kids' education, and we love that. So you should absolutely make public comment, announce that you're running for school board, what seat you're running for, and just talk a little bit about what you want to do and why you want to serve on the school board. Being very humble about it, it goes a long way. You should set up a campaign website and also social media pages, like a Facebook page, an Instagram, a Twitter. All of that can be done at no cost, because obviously we know that doesn't cost any money for social media. A website might be a small fee. I think they have GoDaddy, I think, has a small fee, but there's all different ones out there. Also, I think it would be really important for you to get to know the school board members that are serving. Ask them, what are the big issues in the district? If you haven't been attending, that's okay, but talk to them, find out where they're coming from. What are the things that are going on? It's really important to get their buy-in so that they feel, usually a sitting school board member doesn't get involved in elections, but there's no reason why you can't speak to them and find out some of the things that are happening in the district that you really should be educating yourself on. I think a really important thing to do is pick an issue that your school district is facing and build on its awareness. And let me tell you, the reopening of schools is where to go, because this is what people are. I don't have to tell anyone who's on here tonight knows that this is the biggest issue facing families, because it's not a one size fits all answer. So you have to be able to address that. I also suggest that you host a Zoom happy hour and invite the community, and be prepared to share everything about yourself, your family. It's great. Put a picture of yourself up with, if you have a family, or with your pets, or a great thing is you with other children, reading to children. It's a visual, and that's a really important thing to do. Also, you'll be invited to participate in school board forums. There's many different ones that are hosted by different organizations and communities that are probably participating this evening. PTA has one every single year, and it's really important that you make it your business to attend all of them, especially because they're most likely going to be on Zoom. So it's a lot easier. You can go from forum to forum to forum all in one night, because it's easy, right? It makes it a lot easier that you don't have to get all dressed up, go out to a PTA meeting, but you need to still attend them, but you can do it right from your home. So that piece makes it a little easier, but being with each other and personal relationships also goes a long way. And it's hard to build those through a screen, but it's important that you show your personality and show your passion for why you want to serve on the school board. So it's important. Do not decline any school board forum. It's not a good thing, because unless you absolutely cannot do it for some reason. Also, you should create like a trifold or a flyer that you can send out electronically to all the people that that can vote for you. Even if they can't vote for you, you could have your parents are living in Brandywine, you're running in Colonial, and they might have friends in Colonial where they can share it with their neighbors, and word of mouth is how you get your name out there. And this is the time to do it, is in March. Now we're going into April, and we're getting closer and closer to the election. So you have about a month left. You need to order signs. That's really important. People will tell you you don't need signs. That is not true. You absolutely have to have a minimum of 100 signs. There's a whole thing about designing. I'm not going to get into it, but don't make it too busy, very plain, whatever. It's nice to do. I know in the past I've seen like ones in red clay where they use a white sign with red and the little red little house. I mean, that's really cute. There's different things that you can do that make it appealing, but the biggest thing you want on there is your name and the date of the election. You got to order them because they take a long time, and you need a minimum of 100, like I said, and then you got to put them out, and you should only put them out about 2 weeks before the election because they're going to get taken down. Del Dot will take them down, and you can't put them at any schools until about probably the weekend before the election because the schools will not keep them up. They will take them down, and then you're going to lose your signs. So you should, because, it's expensive. They're not cheap. So then you want to use your volunteers wisely. So in all this, you're building up your volunteer base. You're talking to your friends, your relatives, people that you know, and you're getting people to start volunteering. And those volunteers need to make phone calls for you, and they need to send out emails. The best thing is a recommendation. If you could get someone to write you something. I know Sarah for blah, blah, blah years, and she would make an outstanding board member. And that letter gets sent out to 500 people. You might get 50 votes out of it, but every vote counts in a school board election. Trust me, every vote. It's just like a referendum. Never, ever think that a vote does not count, because it does, because it can make a difference. You should also have some target areas of where you think the votes are going to be, you're going to get the most votes. And that voter report that I told you about in the earlier slide, that will tell you where your voters voted. And it's really important to look at the polls of where they are. So typically, I'm going to use Red Clay because that's where I live. A school like North Star gets a huge turnout. A school like HB gets a huge turnout. Cabin Charter have a really big turnout. So these are schools where you want to make sure that you're really focusing on that, because you're never going to get enough volunteers to cover every single poll. I promise you, not unless you're Joe Biden. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So you have to use your volunteers wisely. And while you're using them, you want to keep putting them at the polling places. And we're going to talk about that in the May checklist, where you know that the voters are coming to. So also a really big thing to do in April is you're going to have to start door knocking. Again, look at the areas of where you think people might come out and vote. Highlands is a tremendous area where they definitely get to the polls and vote. So you want to have a schedule of who's going to go door knocking. And I know it's a pandemic, so you have to be careful. Everybody, you should have. I worked an election. Sarah and I helped somebody this past election, and they gave us a little bag with a mask, hand sanitizer, and a snack in it. And it was great because, obviously we had a mask, but sometimes, you forget. It's not like we've been doing masks forever. It's only been about a little less than a year, right? So you want to make sure that you're not knocking on any doors without a mask on, because you have to be respectful to the people, because you could lose a vote that way, right? So you should think of all those things. But door knocking is very important in a school board election. And then, most importantly, you got to get out in the community. And even though it is the pandemic, there are no in-person meetings. Again, this makes it a lot easier. Go to parent meetings, go to, whether it's a PTA or a civic meeting, community meetings, you got to get your name out there, and people need to know and feel your passion. And that is how you'll get elected. Okay, May checklist. This is election month. So May 11th is the election. You're going to spend your first 2 weekends of May knocking on doors every single evening. You will be exhausted from March to May 11th. Then you can have a glass of wine or whatever, or a cup of coffee, whatever it is that you enjoy, but you can't rest. Look at the way people have worked in elections for, the whole year, right? This is only a short period of time, but that's what I was talking about earlier about commitment. You have to be committed. I can't do it for you. Sarah can't do it for you. Larissa can't do it for you. Only you can do it for you. You have to want this, and that is going to take hard work regardless of where you live. So lots of door knocking, lots of exposure, having like maybe something to hand out, like I call, it's called the lit drop in the campaign world. Also, make sure you send out reminders to tell people to vote. Don't take it for granted. One of the things that you can do that's really helpful now, that especially since we're still in the pandemic, is the vote by mail. It's important that you have available the link to get the absentee ballot, right? And let me tell you, the absentee ballots, you got to follow up on those. You got to tell people if you're voting by absentee and you're voting, because you have to request your ballot and then it has to come to you. I can tell you that my husband did not get his ballot in the last school board election, and I contacted my senator and they hand delivered it to me, okay? Because I was furious because I had been waiting. We ordered them like 2 months ahead of time. That, I think, was because of the unusual situation that was going on with the pandemic. Now it should be no problem getting an absentee ballot. So voting by mail is perfectly fine. It's safe. It'll get there and you can track it. There's a way to track to make sure they've received your ballot if you're uncomfortable. But then there's also polls. And let me tell you, just because there was a poll 2 years ago at a school doesn't mean that it's there now, because the polls change, especially with the pandemic. It has greatly changed. Make sure the weekend before the election that you put your signs out in a visible area. You want them at the schools. Most school boards, school districts have like a policy within their district about school board signs. And I know that you can put them out like the Saturday or Sunday before in most of them, but you should check the policy in your school district that you're running for to see what it is. And you got to have a minimum of 4 signs at every single school so that when people go to vote, they see your name, or that's really important. You also should have poll workers, like I said, at the polls where you really have a big turnout. And when I say a poll worker, you have somebody stand there maybe 3 hours. If school is in session, very important. The day before the election at pickup, you stand in front of those schools. You get your volunteers to wear a t-shirt that say vote for Larissa or whatever it is. And you say, tomorrow's the school board election. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So that's important because they used to not be open at 7 a.m. for school board elections, but they are now. And so you want to remind people, if they're picking their kids up from school, to come in the morning and vote. Then you have to have people back at the polls at 7 in the morning to remind them again. And then you have to be there at pickup again on the day of the election. Did you vote? And you can go up the car line and ask people if they voted. This, again, takes a lot of hard work and volunteers. If you're running for a school board in a district that has a lot of walkers, you should just stand in front of the building holding your sign up. I'm running for school board, or you have someone in your election. Please vote for, Larissa, whatever it is. You should actually make sure you have a person scheduled to pick up the results of the election from every poll. So you have a list of all the polls and you assign someone to get the election results. And this way, because they're slower than molasses to give you the results. And so you have their official results, but they have to be certified. So if you're at the poll when it closes, you can wait and the poll workers will give you the totals of the votes for each thing. And then you add them up and you see if you won. And really important is, don't forget to celebrate your volunteers. Regardless if you win or lose, you should have something. Could be on Zoom. Hopefully we'll be in person by then, but who knows? And have like a gathering to wait for the results so that people are all together when you find out. You should really honor those people. Larissa?
Post-election, so you ask yourself, if you win, congratulations, you will get to work. Obviously, the big real work is ahead, and you will not be sworn in until the July, this year would be the July 2021, right after the fiscal year, the school fiscal year. So that would be your first board meeting. Of course, celebrate, but call your opponent, get your certified results. But if you don't win, you've really understood, spent so much time meeting your community members, understanding, creating a name for yourself, and hopefully, since there's so many positions, you can stay really, really active in the decisions that are being made in your district. So now I would like to introduce both of our guest speakers tonight, Reverend Shanika Perry from the Brandywine School District and Dr. Adriana Bohm from the Red Clay School District, which is my school district. So passing it along.
For the opportunity. I want to first say kudos to Yvonne for delivering a great overview of what it is and what it takes to win. As you were speaking, I was thinking, man, I didn't do all of those things. So I'm glad the district didn't hold it against me. But I am Shanika Perry. I was voted to represent District A. In the Brandywine School District, we have 7 districts, and my particular district, again, is District A, and it covers the north side of Wilmington. A little bit about me. I consider myself a children and youth advocate. And so I have been working with children and youth for as long as I can remember, literally. My very first job, my mother had a daycare when I was younger. And so when the parents were late picking up the children, I became the aftercare provider. And so that was my introduction into early childhood education, but also education in general. From there, I worked with the Department of Parks and Recreation during the summers and really became acclimated into, again, advocating for youth, for children and youth. And then from there, just found myself in different settings, volunteering with the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League. My sorority, I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Also tutoring, and it was always I always say in my second life, I would become an educator because I'm an educator at heart. And so I found myself tutoring, particularly math, children and children as young as 5, well into college. And so again, I consider myself to be an educator at heart. And also I come from a family of educators. So always knew the importance that an educator brought to a child's life. And so my experience as a school board member really began with my work in the Christina School District. My church sits on the east side of Wilmington, and as an extension of the church, we created an after-school program that was always designed to be a community-based program. What we found in a year's time is that it became an insular program. So when I was hired, that was one of the first, my first assignments was that I gave to myself and commitments to the church and the community was that we would make that after school program a community-based program, to which we did. We expanded the program and partnered with Bancroft Elementary School. And there lies my introduction really to the politics of education. At that time, we were dealing with Priority Schools Initiative, I think. And so as a community partner, I was asked to be on the committee and speak at several of the Christina School Board meetings, to which I did. And I really got a closer look at what administration and educators, the frustrations that they deal with. And so as a result of that experience, I wanted to do more in education. And so because I was heavily involved in Christina School District, I felt the hypocrisy because I was not as involved in my home district, which is the Brandywine School District. So again, I committed to doing something. And so became active with Harlan and PS because they were my neighborhood schools. And so reached out to both of the principals there to see if we could continue partnership. And the rest is history, as they say. So regarding my current term with the school board, one of our school board members passed away in, I believe it was August of 2017. And so again, that was around the time that I had made a commitment and desired to do more in my home district. So I felt that it was a perfect opportunity for me to do more, particularly when it came to advocacy work. And so I was interviewed by the board and selected as the candidate to complete Mr. Brumskill's term, and then subsequently elected in May of 2018. My current term, school board terms are 5-year terms, and so my term ends in 2023. My campaign strategy was to focus on issues that I felt impacted not only the north side of Wilmington, but a district-wide issue. And so I thought that it was important that we continued and improved our leadership development. That was straight from educators. And as Yvonne stated, you definitely want to pick their brains, really anyone who will listen, because I spoke with, before I officially launched my campaign, I spoke with educators, principals, staff, janitors, students, and because often a particular demographic that we forget about is our high school students. I sat down with them and I asked them what were their concerns. And so out of my conversations with these different populations, I created what I consider my platform. So it was leadership development, equity and equality across the board, advocacy, being intentional about reducing the achievement gap, and then helping parents and families navigate the obstacles that they face. What I learned when I was campaigning was that it's not that parents did not want, or parents and families, I should say, it's not that they didn't want to be more involved, they didn't really know how. Some were intimidated by the process, some were intimidated by even just the language that is spoken at board meetings. So I have made a commitment that we would be more intentional about creating a bridge between our district and the community. So I focused on an issue-based campaign.
Reverend, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just we have time. Do you want to tell everyone just really quickly what your first 2 years, just what really surprised you about actually being on the board?
Yes. So one of the things that really surprised me, I think, was the structure, the hierarchy. I actually have a presentation. If I could show you a picture. One of the things was the hierarchy. So oftentimes we think the hierarchy looks something like this. Oops, excuse me. So it's linear, where it's school board, superintendent, the administration, principals, building staff. And then, but really, it looks more like this. So it's so many tentacles, and it's no wonder that it's difficult at times to get things accomplished, because there's so many different tentacles associated with. So this is Brandywine's organizational chart. And as you can see, we have our board, the superintendent, and then we have two assistant superintendents, in addition to a plethora of directors and CFOs. And then from the assistant superintendent of academic achievement, we have these other tentacles. And then the same with our assistant superintendent of student services. And so I often found myself frustrated, because as a board member, we're not necessarily supposed to be hands-on, so to speak. I'm a doer, I'm a community advocate. I'm used to touching the people that I advocate for. And so there are a lot of protocols and laws that prohibit the direct communication. And the part of it, so some of it is legally we cannot do this. Other aspects is that it's cultural. Like you're supposed to, as a board, we govern, whereas a superintendent manages the district.
That's
So
amazing. I'm so sorry to cut you off because I would love to go all night. That's just such an important thing to hear, the difference between governance and management. Dr. Bohm, where are you?
I see her. Hi, Adriana.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, give us a few minutes and then we'll try to squeeze a question in for both of you.
Okay, so my name is Adriana Bohm, and I've served on the Red Clay School Board I'm in my 7th year now. My biggest thing that I do in my life is I'm a mother. I have 2 teenagers and they're in the Red Clay School District. I also went to Red Clay growing up. I'm a professor and I teach sociology. My focus is on equity. And through my children's education, when they were at Highlands Elementary School, I was a proud member of the PTA, go Yvonne. And we had a number of PTA meetings that I would attend. And we had our president then was Tizzy Lockman. And she encouraged me to get involved. She said, I'm going to create a new position for you and it's going to be called advocacy. So I said, okay, well, what are we going to do? And she said, well, we'll make it up as we go along. You're going to be advocating for families and for students. And so I said, okay. So we began this process of being really involved and being very active in the PTA and really reaching out to different people, not just in our school, but in the community to see what the issues were for people in Wilmington. We both lived in Wilmington at that time, we still do. And after a few years, we had a really big coalition of people that were students and parents and educators and even administrators who were really vocal around some equity issues throughout Red Clay. So people said, well, some of us should run for a school board position. So we started to go to school board meetings and then someone said, oh, Adriana, you should run for the school board. And I said, well, I have no idea of how I would go about doing that. So Tizzy volunteered to be my campaign manager. And here we are 7 years later, right? So I don't see myself being alone on the school board. I see myself there as a representation of a number of different groups in the community, and that community goes from Wilmington, Delaware, all the way out to the hills of Caucasian. And a lot of the issues that we have focused on when we've been at the board position have been issues around equity, like I said, because that's something I'm very interested in, but advocacy. And I think something that Reverend Perry said that was really important is that a lot of times people don't know how to advocate. That's not something that we've been taught, right? So trying to teach people and educate people that you do have a voice, that you can say something, and that when a whole bunch of people come out to a board meeting, that's really, really important. And it's a very effective strategy for getting voices heard. So that's one thing that we worked on a lot during our tenure on the board. One of the things I think you guys wanted me to talk about a little bit was what was surprising about being on the school board. So I'll say that personally, I'm actually very shy and I do not like to be in the public spotlight at all. And I think one of the biggest things I found, well, I knew that being on the board, I would have to be familiar with policy, right? Board level policy and educational policy. And that's actually where I want to be. I want to be, in a room with a book learning policy. That's where my heart is. But I had to learn that I had to go out and network and talk to people and talk to large groups of people and ask people what their suggestions were and, have responses for when people ask me questions in big public settings. And that's something that was a little bit daunting in the beginning. You train yourself and you keep doing it and you get a little bit more used to it. But really, I think being in that public light is very big. And if you don't know a lot about that space or that area, that's something that definitely can take you back a little bit. And then often what I'll find is I'll be in a meeting just in the back of the room, just there sort of as a parent or a community member, and someone will see me and they'll say, hey, Dr. Bohm, can you talk to us about Red Clay's latest initiative on this? And you have to be able to, be familiar with it and talk about it. So that's something that's been surprising.
That's really, really fantastic. We do have just a few minutes left. Thank you. Lori, do you see questions in the chat?
Yep, so we have a few questions. The first being, what is the time commitment for being a school board member?
So
100 hours a week, or what is it?
I'm not a school board member, but I maybe Adriana or Shanika can answer it, but I would say that it depends upon if it's now and you're going through what you're going through now, deciding to open schools and whether or not and how that looks. It's probably a lot more hours than it.
Yeah, let's hear. How many do you think, how many has it been during COVID?
Adriana?
1 week I spent 80 hours doing school board stuff. We had hundreds and hundreds of emails, and I responded, I hope to every single one of them. I've written speeches for school board meetings that have taken me 40 or 50 hours to write. I wrote a speech this summer on SROs. It was almost a 20-page single-space document that took me 30 hours to read when I was cutting, 30 minutes to read when I was cutting stuff out. So sometimes I spend more on school board than I do on my actual full-time job that I get paid to do. And then you can have slow times, and then I can have a week or two where I'm not, really doing anything. You might have 1 or 2 emails that you respond to. So
How about Shanika? How about you?
I would echo that. It depends on what's going on, not only just nationally, but within your district. So if there is a pressing issue, it may require 80 hours, or others. I would say on average, maybe 30. And again, emails, being responsive to emails and making sure that you're well read on and versed on the various issues that pertain to your particular district and in education as a whole.
Lori, any other questions?
So another question that is a little bit more specific in terms of being qualified to run, and that is just to confirm, you cannot live and work in the district that you want to serve in. Is that correct?
Okay, so you can't work for the district that you want to serve in. You have to live in the district in which you are going to run in. So you have to be a resident of that representative district, but you cannot be an employee of the school district. I hope that answered the question.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yep, one more. What is the ballpark cost to run a campaign?
How about both of you? What did you spend on your campaigns? Or raise, I should say, raise and spend.
I actually spent most of my personal funds. I was new to campaigning. I was new to school boards, well, on this side of things. So I would say maybe 1,500. I did have many members of my church. A number of members from my church and sorority donated as well. So, and that's being really conservative.
Adriana?
on my first campaign, I had 2 men running against me, and I spent between $10,000 and $12,000 of my money and money that I campaigned for and fundraised. But it was close to $12,000 for my first run. My second run, no one ran against me, so I didn't have to do any campaigning.
I just want to elaborate a little bit about that, is that I think if you can raise, I don't want people to be put off that, oh my God, I'm not going to spend $10,000 of my own money, which I totally get. There are people who might, as a candidate, they might be interested in, the most that an individual can give to a campaign is $600. This is not fundraising. Okay, the amount that, like, if you went up to Deborah and said, oh, will you donate to my campaign? And she wants to give you $1,000. She can't. She can only give you 600. But you can fundraise, and that is where you have your financial. That's why I said you should set up a financial committee with a treasurer to help you control that. So that helps you keep within the legal, guidelines of how you're allowed to raise money. I know people who have run for school board that didn't use 1 cent of their own money. They just got donations. People were interested in them getting, they knew they would make a difference. And they invested in them. And so I just don't want people, I've heard everything from, I didn't spend any money to 15,000, like Adriana said, but I feel like I don't want people to get scared off from running from school board because they think it's going to cost them $15,000 or even $10,000 of their own money.
Plus, when you run on an issue that matters to your constituents, people
Right.
want to support you.
Mhm.
And like I said, I was in a very competitive race.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that because I did a lot of foot advertisement. So I did do a lot of door knocking on Saturdays. As a matter of fact, Saturdays, Sundays, and most Fridays, and a few days during the week. But and that's how I would say that I was able to get my message out.
I knocked on over 1,000 doors from Wilmington all the way to Hocassin for 2 or 3 months. We knocked every Saturday and Sunday, and we knocked during the week. I also had teams of people knocking. And here was the surprising thing. I lost 15 pounds when I ran for the first school board race because I was walking around Wilmington, Pike Creek, and Hocassin and Ellesmere so much.
So we promised real talk.
There's something good, right? It's just like, but I think that both Shanika and Adriana are proving the point of what I said earlier. You have to be very committed to wanting to win, and you have to work hard. It's not going to come to you. I've seen people who I've tried to help, and they don't listen. They don't understand that they have to be committed. I can want you to win. You could, like 10 people can want you to win, but you have to want to win. You have to want this for whatever reason, whether you want to make a difference or you just want to serve the community. There are so many reasons that people want to serve on school boards. I mean, obviously we all want the people that care about student outcomes to be the ones that get elected and that are really gonna, hold people's feet to the fire, because that is the role of the school board, is to hold the superintendent's feet to the fire, right? But at the end of the day, we can't make you be passionate about it. I loved your comment, Shanika, about advocacy. People are scared of advocacy. It's a scary word. And I mean, I know that when I first started out, I was scared of it, believe it or not. And I've been advocating for almost 30 years. It's something that you sort of do it, you see it's successful, you know that your voice counts, and you see you're making a difference, and that's when you really get more energized to continue doing it. And those are the people that are really can serve as good school board members.
And it's really the ultimate service. I mean, if Adriana and Shanika are talking about 30 to 100 hours a week for a volunteer role, I mean, this is the way our system is right now. So should we just say thank you to everybody unless there's a last question?
There was a question. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Someone asked privately how exactly what did I spend the money on. For me, the majority of my budget went to signage, yard signs, and postcards. And they were with me everywhere I went until election day.
Right.
Enormous thank you to Yvonne, Sarah, to absolutely everybody who showed up today, especially our speakers, really just adding more hours to your week, just in service of everybody else. So thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here this evening. And we ended on time.
Bye.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.